Hi everybody, I'm Sydney Garrett Hayes and this is my presentation on violence and video games, and this has to do with trying to see if there's a correlation between people that watch video games and use what they see in the video games as a conflict resolution skill, and whether or not the violence in the video games has a correlation between the school shootings that happen. So the objective is to make that correlation. If there's a propensity for children and adults who are exposed to violence, whether it's video game or violence in the home, and to see if the depictions in the video games have an effect on the conflict resolution skills that people have. So this particular photograph is from The Guardian, and it looks like a everyday simple photograph of a young child playing a video game. However, it can also be the indoctrination of a child who uses a gun to solve a conflict. There's a big difference between owning a gun to protect your home and to protect yourself, and also using that gun to resolve conflict. If somebody makes you angry, or if in traffic, if somebody pulls in front of you and you start this road rage, and the road rage incidents winds up with someone getting shot. You know, where does that come from in our day and time? So then to move on, The Guardian, who this photograph comes from, is a non-funded a website that does not use advertising, so they can do more cutting edge type of articles. They don't have to be beholden to any kind of advertising agency or the NRA that may pay them money in order to get them to write the kind of stories that they want. And so through their investigation and their articles, they did see that there was somewhat of correlation there between a lot of the school shootings and the mass public shootings and the people who watch and reenact kind of what happens in these video games. There's a great public debate about the validity of this. Many say that there is no basis for this, and that violence is in video games does not create aggression in children. However, when you look at what has happened in the past shootings, so school shootings, and when people like go to Walmart and do a shooting, they kind of are reenacting the exact same thing that is seen in these video games. They arrive with an arsenal full of weapons and tons of ammunition, which means that they're there to do a considerable amount of damage. And this idea that they have in their mind is that they need all these guns and that they need all this ammunition in order to carry out the task that they set there to do. So there's also, this idea that violence feels good. And so there's an article from a Live Science website where Craig Kennedy explains that in humans, there is kind of, I guess what you could say is a release valve. When you release your anger and you release your aggression and you become violent, like, it doesn't have to be violence against another person. It could be just throwing a glass against the wall because you're angry. And so what this does is it creates a release mechanism that feels good. And so all vertebrates, dogs, humans, gorillas, apes, you know, we all on some level have some type of aggression. So it's an inane kind of, um, it's a, what am I trying to say? It's an inane trait that people have to be violent. So, and it is the other, you know, different side of the brain, the reasoning side of the brain that says, no, you don't want to do that. You don't want to go take a gun and shoot everybody up at Walmart. So we can kind of go through the evolution of video games. In the next slide, it'll show you uh, in the 70s when I very first started having to see video games, there was Pong, and Pong was just like tennis. It was a black screen and two cursors on either side that you could move with the little joystick, and a tennis ball that kind of went back and forth. And so that was it. That was the first video game, and people played this endlessly. And then as things began to evolve, there was Pac-Man, and Pac-Man went around and ate all the little things, and then he went to eat the goblins. That was very benign. And then video games got to be a little bit more sophisticated. There was Super Mario, and they were fun, and they weren't violent. They weren't people going with guns. They were just happy little video games. This is the slide for the Pong. So this was Pong, where it went back and forth, and then you have an example of Pac-Man and then Super Mario. And then came the evolution of more sophisticated video games that look like they're real. If you look at the picture on the right here of the people in the airport, I guess it's Russia because I see the Russian writing. And there's a shooter, and he's shooting people coming through the security. What is the purpose for that? I don't see the purpose for that. These are just more violence and violently based games. And in the next slide, I'll show you there's proof that the violence rewires the brain so that we are more predisposed to violence. So, and then on the left-hand side, you see an excerpt from the video game that's called Active Shooter. And then in this game, the player gets to go through a school and shoot students and teachers. So there's a Harvard study that says that exposure to violence is associated with an elevated risk and a wide range of mental problems in children and adolescents. So this has been proved for many, many years. But children of violence in the home, that is more post-traumatic stress. And also these people, they don't have an outlet. They don't have a proper coping mechanism for the trauma that they have been through. And one of their release mechanisms, if you have watched a lot of video games and you've been trained that the conflict resolution here is when I'm angry is to take a gun and to take my aggression out on other innocent people. So there is also a very big correlation. This is an article from Polygon.com where the children who did the shooting at Columbine were very big video game players, and they even said in their testimony that they did play, you know, a lot of video games, and that is what they did. They arrived at school with an arsenal full of guns and ammunitions and took the lives of 12 people. So the solution, what can the solution be? Well, the solution has to be that there are stricter gun control laws and that not every person can just go out and get a handgun. The world is just full of people who don't have I like to say normal, but you can't define normal, and so they don't have the proper coping mechanism for their aggression or for their anger or for their angst or for their hurt. And so in this country, guns have to be made more harder to get. And then also the powers that be have to be able to change their ideology behind the product that they're putting out and recognize that the product that they are putting out is detrimental to the safety of people in this country. So every mother, every father with a student in school has to now worry, is my child going to come home safe at the end of the day? So I am not necessarily speaking to every person out there that plays video games. I am not speaking to you. I am speaking about the people in the country, the millions of people in this country who do not have the good conflict resolution skills that can help them release and properly process their emotions. And there has to be a breaking point in this country where even though video games are rated for older people, kids are going to get a hold of them. I mean, kids are going to get a hold of that Playboy magazine. And so I know I did, even though it was meant for adults. If there's a will, there's a way. And it has to be made less alluring, the idea of going out and playing in the dirt until your mom called you home, those days need to reckon back to us. So that's my presentation. Thank you very much, and happy summer to everyone.